Sometimes wisdom is heard in a still small voice. Wisdom comes to us from a still small voice. This morning, may it be our proclaiming of the word. Amen. For the entire length of our marriage, Sheila and I were stewards of some beautiful antiques. There is this pristine Victorian living room suite, the settee, or the Chesterfield, and the chair, and the big grandmother chair that we've had restored. There's a center pedestal dining room table made of oak, built in about 1920, that has the porcelain casters. There's two RCMP barracks beds that we hauled out of the old church at Knox in Calgary. We have my great-grandmother's dresser from the homestead just west of Medicine Hat that's been in the family for years. And as we've had to go through the difficult process of dividing our assets, the question of what do we do with the antiques has begun to arise. What do we do with these things that have been so precious for generations? The really hard part is that both our boys, practical, hardworking, thoughtful, contemporary young men, want none of it. And they're emphatic about it. Get rid of it. We don't want it. They don't want any of that old stuff. What do you do with an ancient gift that no longer serves the current culture? In my understanding of the reading that Myrna shared with us, this is exactly the question for Christians in the 2nd century. The writer of John's Gospel is speaking a deep truth. How do we interpret the mind of Jesus in issues about which he's silent? Hear the words again. I still have many things to say to you, but you cannot bear them now. When the Spirit of truth comes, he will guide you into all the truth. For he will not speak on his own, but will speak whatever he hears, and he will declare to you the things that are to come. I think it's an even more critical question today. What are we to do with Jesus' teaching, the liturgies and the ancient traditions of the church, in a culture that is dramatically different than when all of it first began? Yesterday at Queen's Avenue United Church in New Westminster, British Columbia Conference ordained, commissioned, and recognized newly minted ministers. It's an annual thing. It was a time to bestow an ancient tradition onto a group of leaders who will come to understand those traditions from their own perspectives. As part of the celebration, people from across the church were invited to offer their own perspectives in written form. One letter came to that ordination service from someone who was raised in the United Church, but left because a deep longing was not being met. This young adult has returned to the church, like the prodigal returning home, with a deep reservation that the church does not have, the congregational church does not have the capacity to be hospitable. It was called Love Letter to the church, and I've been given permission to share it with you this morning. It kind of It's kind of divided into three parts, and I'd like to for us to hear them in three different parts. Love letter to the church. Your loving and consistent presence has allowed me to grow into myself. Your warm embrace had held me while challenging my ignorance and calling me to my best self. Your spirit had held a place for me to experience what is possible in community. Experience how only love and acceptance can transform. Your wings of mercy and grace enfold me when I fall and welcome me when I return without question or judgment. Your passion for justice has changed my very landscape in such a way that I no longer see the fierce yet gentle hand guiding, crafting, and holding. Your healing hands have transformed my energetic and inner world in a way that words fail to convey. Transformed in darkness into light, suffering into wisdom, and deafening loneliness into gracious solitude. That's the first part. Here, in words so tender, so loving, so home. The first part of this love letter feels like my early history of church. It feels like my experience of being loved unconditionally in this great cathedral in downtown Calgary. Perhaps it feels like yours. But here comes the second part. And because I love you, I will tell you why I left you. It was the moment I looked into your eyes and realized I had outgrown you. The moment I realized you were more interested in seeing you. The moment I realized you were more interested in me seeing you than you were in seeing me. Can you believe the humility in that statement? The gentle and yet insistent truth spoken. You were more interested in me seeing you than you were in seeing me. Second part continues. The moment I felt stifled by the monotony of congregational life. In a community of faith built on transforming darkness into light, death into rebirth, I wonder how it got to be that we grasp so fiercely on the sameness that we cut off the very windpipe of God herself. Then we wonder why people left. We look at our buildings, our worship style, our leadership teams, we study statistics of changing social trends and point to families' busy lives to make sense of these departures. It's as if we don't trust the message. We doubt the very foundation on which we stand. We just don't believe it can be so simple as transforming ourselves. And so we run around doing everything but that. Staying so busy that we ensure the noise we create is louder than God's frightening call. And because I love you, I will remind you that you are not my lover. At best, you are a trail of love notes that guide me into her arms. At worst, you whisper to me that you are her. So when I left, I want you to know that I was leaving you, but I never left her. I was simply continuing to follow the trail of love notes where yours left off.
Sometimes, I think we forget that we, the church, are not the divine mystery. We forget that our faithfulness is not going to be measured by who sits here on Sunday mornings and the numbers that are sitting in the pews. I know I'm part of this sameness, and it makes me sad. I wonder if any of this resonates with you, and I wonder if you share my sadness. In the third part of the letter, I realized that the church doesn't have a lot of chances to get it right. We don't have many more years to be the difference we want in the world. Listen in on part 3. Because I love you, I will tell you why I have come back. I've come back because I was led back, and I followed. I have come back because I believe the soil is rich. I have come back because I need you. Like a grown child arriving on their parents' stoop, I knew I would be welcome. I could count on being loved, being held, and God knows, being fed. And now that I'm back, I have one small request. I want the church. Not only do I want it, but this is a requirement of our relationship. I know this will be hard. The natural order of passing down one generation at a time has been disrupted. I'm asking you to pass down 2 or 3 generations. But I don't want you to just give it to me and leave. I need you. We need you. But not in the driver's seat. In the passenger seat. We, that second and third generation, we must practice leading while you're here. So when you're gone, we have the skills to carry on. As you created a trail of love notes for my journey, it's now my task to lengthen and broaden this trail so that my children need not leave you in search for God. Can you hear this call? For me, this love letter to the church sets before us a wisdom we will have trouble clearing. This Spirit of truth offers to us now a troubling message. We've watched our young people leave the pews of our denomination and congregate at places like camps, where the culture welcomes them generation after generation. Because our appetite for the shocking cultural differences between who's here and who we say we want here is very small. We have little stomach for the new wine that we want to put into our old wineskins. Friends, this love letter to the church is the Spirit of truth speaking to us on matters about which Jesus, the Scriptures, and the Christian path are pretty silent. how we respond will mark our future. May God help us as we respond well. May God help us if we don't.